Here is Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker, who died as they lived, by the gun. Bonnie is seen leaning against Clyde. Clyde was a master gunman.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. At the 2021 Authentic Bonnie and Clyde Festival, I presented to the audience during the Historians Dinner a detailed timeline of the actual Bonnie and Clyde death car. I do have that presentation on my Facebook page and my YouTube channel. At this year's festival, 2023, I presented a continuation of the story of the death car. The title is Fake, Imitation, and Movie Death Cars. Now let me share with you my presentation. We know how the story of Bonnie and Clyde ended on May 23, 1934. We know that the actual death car is in Nevada at Whiskey Pete's Casino, our own traveling exhibit. We know that the Bonnie and Clyde death car became an immediate attraction for people, even on the day of the ambush. It seemed as if everyone wanted to view the car that Bonnie and Clyde was ambushed and died inside of. The death car not only became an instant attraction for people, it became very valuable. Many opportunists saw the prospect to make money. However, opportunists had a huge problem. There was only one death car. Or was there? For the first time, very soon after May 23, 1934, fake death cars began to appear. I've divided this presentation into three different topics: fake death cars, imitation or replica death cars, and movie death cars. First, let's talk about fake death cars. These fake death cars were made from original 1934 Ford four-doors that had been designed and are altered to deceive a person into believing it was the real Bonnie and Clyde death car. In the years following the deadly ambush, fake death cars began to appear. At one count, there were close to almost 24 fake cars. Some closely resembled the actual death car, and others not so close. These fake cars were filled with real bullet holes, positioned closely to the location of the holes on the actual death car. Many of the interiors of these cars were filled with blood. Rumors were that in at least one of the fake death cars, 2 chickens were placed inside of the car, and then their heads were cut off, allowing the headless chickens to flop around inside of the car, showering the interior with blood to resemble how the blood of Bonnie and Clyde was splattered on the inside of the real death car. To complete the display of many of the fake cars, shotguns and other firearms were altered to look similar to those firearms that were taken from the actual death car. However, once the hype was over, these fake death cars were either scrapped for the metal during World War II, which was most common, or restored back to their original condition, which was very expensive to do. So, not many were restored. Then, to Ted Toddy's threat of lawsuits, the last few remaining fake death cars were destroyed by court order or voluntarily destroyed by the owners. According to my research, there are only 2 original 1930s fake death cars left today. One is at the Volo Museum in Illinois. This car was also used for research purposes for the 1967 Bonnie and Clyde movie, but was not actually used in the movie. This car started out being shown in circuses and state fairs in the late 1930s and 40s. The other original fake death car is in Gibson, Louisiana, and is available for viewing at the Bonnie and Clyde Ambush Museum. Gibson's death car and I have a long history. As a young boy in the 1960s, I would see this very car at almost every Fort Worth stock show. During many decades, this death car was owned by the National Crime Museum of Huntsville, Texas, even though the Crime Museum was just mainly the death car and a few firearms. As a kid, I remember seeing the car behind a chicken wire fence inside of an enclosed trailer. The National Crime Museum's display also included a few firearms, such as a sawed-off shotgun supposedly used by Bonnie Parker. The last time I saw the fake car in its original trailer was in 1993 at the Bonnie and Clyde Trades Day near Arcadia, Louisiana. The old trailer and the display hadn't changed in decades. It was still entombed behind the original chicken wire that had become rusty. By this time, there was a strong, musty smell to the inside of the trailer. A few years after that, the fake death car, tractor, trailer, and guns were offered for sale. A businessman who lived in Denton, Texas, purchased the whole exhibit. I do not know what happened to the vintage trailer, but by the late 1990s, the fake death car was up for sale again. It was on tour to many car shows, paint swap meet near Fort Worth, and other shows. However, the Denton businessman decided not to sell the firearms. He still has them today, only showing them to a select few people. It's questionable if these guns are authentic to Bonnie and Clyde. Next, let's talk about replica or imitation death cars. My definition of a replica or imitation death car: a restored or rebuilt 1934 Ford four-door to replicate the Bonnie and Clyde death car either prior to or after the deadly ambush. So a replica or an imitation death car could be one of two versions of the car: restored or rebuilt in the condition as Clyde stole the car, of course without bullet holes or blood, or number two, after the ambush with bullet holes and blood in the interior. Two perfect examples of replica cars: one 1934 Ford that was restored by historian Sandy Jones, and the other restored by Barrel family member Buddy Barrel. Both restored a 1934 Ford four-door exactly as the Bonnie and Clyde death car was as it rolled off the Ford assembly line. There are several other replica death cars around the country. These were built or restored to replicate the death car after the ambush with bullet holes. Here's a few replica death cars and their locations. Historic Auto Attractions, located in Roscoe, Illinois. Hollywood Car Museum, located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Buckhorn Museum, located in San Antonio, Texas. And a special replica on loan to the Bonnie and Clyde Ambush Museum for use in the bank robberies here in Gippsland, of course with fake bullet holes. The next replica was built by one of Bonnie and Clyde's biggest fans. Emilio was a multi-millionaire and owned a mansion with a huge car collection, including numerous Porsche racing cars, Mercedes, and a 1928 Cadillac, similar to the one that Al Capone had. Emilio watched every Bonnie and Clyde movie that he could find, even ones made in Spanish. Within the compound of Emilio's property, he had his own private zoo, which he opened often for the poor children that lived in his neighborhood. Emilio made a close replica of the Bonnie and Clyde death car and placed it at the entrance to his zoo. The neighborhood children loved sitting in the old Ford with all of its bullet holes. However, like Bonnie and Clyde, Emilio had a violent end to his life when he was 44 years old in 1993. His mansion was invaded by 8 armed men that shot Emilio to death, including the fatal shot to his head. You see, Emilio was his middle name. Most of you may recognize his full name as Pablo Emilio Escobar. The 8 men that invaded his house was a special squad of the Colombian National Police Force. Escobar was one of the richest drug dealers that the world has ever known. He was responsible for the deaths of many people around the world, yet, at the same time, making sure that the children in his Colombian hometown did not go hungry and had nice clothes to go to church in. It is true he was an admirer of Bonnie and Clyde and built a replica of the death car. The Colombian government seized all of Escobar's assets, including the death car, but the location of the car is unknown. Today, Escobar's mansion and compound are part of an amusement park with 2 luxury hotels. Escobar's Bonnie and Clyde death car had real bullet holes. Knowing of Escobar's crime, maybe even real human blood in the interior instead of chicken blood. Now let's talk about movie death cars, which of course are 1934 Fords which were used in movies showing the ambush of Bonnie and Clyde. For many years, the most famous movie car was once a favorite show attraction at the authentic Bonnie and Clyde Festival in Gibbsland, Louisiana. In 1967, the film Bonnie and Clyde, starring Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, used an altered 1934 Ford for their ambush scene. I said altered due to the car having parts from later cars, such as a Chevrolet motor, however, still having an original look on the exterior. After the movie was made and released, Warren Beatty, who produced the film, gave the 1934 Ford movie death car to the Southwestern Historical Wax Museum in Grand Prairie, Texas. The death car was displayed with wax figures of Bonnie and Clyde. The display also included firearms once used by Bonnie and Clyde. In 1988, the building burned to the ground. There was nothing left of the wax figures or the guns, but the death car survived as a shell of the movie car. Nothing was left but the metal body of the car and the motor. All of the interior was burned. However, the car soon came back from the ashes and was restored through a couple of owners, including historian Bob Andrews. The car first appeared at the authentic Bonnie and Clyde Festival in 1994. Owner Ken Holmes Jr. of Southwestern Historical Incorporated and at one time the owner of the Bonnie and Clyde Ambush Museum was credited for actually bringing the death car back to life. This original movie car was featured in the following: the 1967 Bonnie and Clyde movie, Southwestern Historical Wax Museum from 1968 to 1988, the 1991 Fox TV movie Bonnie and Clyde, The True Story, the History Channel Tales of the Gun, 7 times at the authentic Bonnie and Clyde Festival in Gibbsland. In 2001, the State Fair of Texas Gangster Memorial Exhibit. In 2008, the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in Washington, D.C. until it closed. In 2016, it was moved to the Alcatraz East Crime Museum, located in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It remains there today, still owned by the Holmes family. Ken passed away in 2012. It was also featured in numerous magazines, newspapers, and special features. Other movie death cars include, in 2013, Lifetime released a 4-hour, 2-night TV movie titled Bonnie and Clyde. A 1934 Ford was specially built for the ambush in this movie. The location of the movie car is unknown today. The last major Bonnie and Clyde movie was in 2019. The movie called The Highwayman used a 1934 Ford that was built specially for this movie. It is now in private ownership, being stored in California. That concludes my Bonnie and Clyde death car presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you so much for watching.